Golly gee whiz, Eric, don't you know? Donald Trump has assembled the Avengers.
I do think like the team, that the coalition he assembled before the election, Elon, RFK, Tucker Carlson, Tulsi, all those people, I like every one of them for certain things. I do think, though, there's cause for concern. Like I mentioned, social issues just are on the back burner.
So this political realignment, do you really feel that that is a seismic shift from his first term?
Ramaswamy and Elon, let them go after a lot of these other departments that are just a waste and nobody really is going to be there to defend them. So my hope for him is he won't be as much of a lapdog of Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel as many American politicians.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Hey, it was a great live broadcast last Tuesday when we had Eric Sammons on the team for 8 hours. He wasn't on for 8 hours. We were on for 8 hours doing live coverage, and Eric was a part of that. We really enjoyed his participation, his commentary and analysis, and he joins us this morning to get his take and follow up there. Good morning to you, Eric. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Joe. Always great to be with you. I had a blast last Tuesday, although I will say after I got off, I was so wired. That was like my bedtime at that point, but I couldn't go to bed.
You should have come back on. We went on to like 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. It was fantastic. It was great.
Yeah, maybe I should have.
I enjoyed reading your piece the day after, though, over at Crisis Magazine. We're going to put a link to it in the show notes, crisismagazine.com. Trump wins. Let the work begin. I found this interesting, and I think the most interesting thing that stood out to me about your article was on the coalition, the realignment. And you say this, you say, quote, to be clear, this new political realignment is a cause for concern for conservative Catholics, for it has put social issues like abortion and homosexual marriage on the back burner. Golly gee whiz, Eric, don't you know? Donald Trump has assembled the Avengers. You've got Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy, Vivek Ramaswamy, even Tulsi Gabbard, and now Mike Huckabee is on the team. Eric, what's not to love?
Well, when you threw in Mike Huckabee, I wasn't quite as excited. But I do think like the team, that the coalition he assembled before the election, Elon, RFK, Tucker Carlson, Tulsi, all those people, I like every one of them for certain things. Every one of them, the commonality between them is every one of them is a thinker. They read books. They really look into things. And two, every single one of them has at some point in their life gone against the dominant narrative at personal cost, at potential personal cost. I mean, RFK is probably the best example of that. And so for that, I admire every one of them for that. I do think, though, there's cause for concern. Like I mentioned, social issues just are on the back burner with all of them. And honestly, I think for most of them, even like somebody like a J.D. Vance, who's probably the most concerned about the social issues personally, I think they just recognize where we are as a country. And they're just simply saying, okay, we're not going to, I mean, let's be honest. If Trump had run as a hardcore pro-lifer, there is a decent chance he would have lost. I don't like saying that. I don't want to say that, but I think that's reality. And so the fact is he went soft on abortion, soft on the social issues, and he won in a landslide. So it clearly did not hurt him at all. And so we just have to realize that where I can be very happy and praise a lot of his coalition for certain aspects of what they bring to the table, I also can just acknowledge, listen, these guys are not going to make abortion unthinkable. These guys are not going to do anything about gay marriage. They might do some things on the edges about the trans phenomenon. I think there's a lot of pushback against the trans, even among normies. People who might be pro-abortion or pro-homosexual marriage are not as happy about, dudes playing with girls in sports. So they might do some things on that, but they're not going to like make it outlaw trans surgeries or anything like that. So like I said, there's cause for being excited and there's cause for concern.
So it seems to me that the biggest agenda item going into this next 4 years is going to be to gut the bloat of government agencies. They're talking about it all over the place. And yesterday, one of the big talking points that was on the social media was how the Pentagon officials were already talking about how they were going to resist any efforts by the Trump administration for any major change, because they're talking about, firing generals and admirals. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about firing 600 employees. And I think it was the FDA or Health and Human Services or something. So there's a lot of discussion now with Elon Musk and Vivek teaming up for Doge. That's a nice trolling, acronym there. They're talking about they're going to be the guys who are going to determine what is bloat and what needs to go and whatnot. So that seems to be the focus. But do you think he's even going to be capable of pulling all that off? Going against the deep state or the swamp, it didn't go all that well for him in the first 4 years.
Yeah, I honestly, all my hope on this rests in Vivek Ramaswamy, because I think it's going to be incredibly hard. I think there's going to be an incredible pushback. There's going to be legal pushback. There's going to be all this stuff. But Ramaswamy is the one guy who has looked into this and really understands it. He had an interview with Tucker Carlson last week where he talked in more detail about this. And I really think if it's going to be done, he's going to be the one spearheading it. I mean, I like Elon, and I think Elon is very good about understanding the need to cut waste. But this isn't a private company. It's not Twitter he's taken over that he can just say, okay, 80% of you are fired. He just can't do that in the federal government. But Vivek does have ideas, specific practical ideas of legally how this can be done. Now, I still think there's going to be incredible pushback. It's just going to be ugly. And I hope they don't cave. I hope Trump understands the need to do this. I mean, honestly, they need to impoverish Arlington, Virginia, Montgomery County, Maryland. I mean, the richest counties in this country almost all surround Washington, D.C. And we all know why. And so it just needs to be gutted as much as possible. I personally think that what will probably happen is there will be some cuts here and there. Some departments will get cut more than others, but they're not going to gut the Pentagon. They're not going to cut the Pentagon because, the Republican base is not going to support that. If there's one thing Republicans will always support is big government when it comes to the Pentagon, defense and the Army and the military services. So I don't think that'll get touched very much. I do think, though, oh, please, please, please give RFK the keys to the kingdom with FDA, HHS, stuff like that, and just let him go crazy with that. I think that would be great. And then let, Ramaswamy and Elon, let them go after a lot of these other departments that are just a waste and nobody really is going to be there to defend them. So that's where I kind of see actual cuts happening.
Does Elon Musk and Vivek actually have the time? Doesn't Starlink and SpaceX and Tesla, don't they need some leadership? Aren't you the boss over there? X alone, it probably takes up a lot of his time. So does he have time to spend on finding out who and what needs to be audited and edited and deleted from the federal government? It seems like it's a nice idea on paper, but it feels like a paper dragon and not a real one, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think, first of all, never, ever underestimate Elon and his ability to manage multiple things. He already manages, 4 or 5 billion, more than $1 billion companies. And so he clearly figures out some way to do this. I don't think the guy sleeps. I think, honestly, what he does, what he brings to the table, I don't want to say he's not a figurehead. He's more than that. But I do think what he would bring to the table is just this attitude of, okay, what do you do? How did you help this organization? And he will be relentless on that, just kind of that focus. And then I think Vivek is the one who comes in and says, okay, practically, this is how we're going to do it. Because the truth is, Vivek's not running something right now. He's the investors and all that stuff. I'm not saying he's not a busy guy, but I think he's going to be the one who says, okay, here's my team, and they're going to do, this is exactly what they're going to do. Here's the practical steps. So that's how I kind of see it is, Elon comes in, he's really relentlessly focuses on, what are you people actually bringing to the table? And you'll find that vast majority of them, nothing. And then Vivek will come in and actually make the slashes. Also notice when they said these are positions outside of government, and they will, and the goal is to finish it all by July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of America. And so it's not a long-term. In fact, some people were saying Tesla shareholders, don't worry, Elon's doing this temporarily. Then it's not a permanent full-time government position he's taking.
I do think it's very interesting, some of the names that he has proposed for some of these positions. We talked about that yesterday with Sam McCarthy from the Washington stand. And some of these guys, I think, are going to be like thinking from the outside. Like they're going to be doing things that I think are innovative and interesting. And this morning, it seems like that Pete Hegseth has been nominated as defense secretary. He's a very interesting character, was just recently on the Sean Ryan podcast. And one of the things that stood out to me was, one, he understands veterans, of course. He understands war fighting. He's earned 2 Bronze Stars, if I'm not mistaken. He also understands that DEI is a cancer that has to be cut out, and he seems very determined to cut that out. But also, he wants to take women out of combat roles. And I'm like, yay and amen. Praise be to God. Absolutely. It is not women's job to fight these wars. That's what men were built for. And I think he might be an interesting person. Do you think someone like that he's never been a general. He's an officer. He was a major, I think, or a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard. But he, can he step into that role and be able to make the positive changes that are necessary? I'm not as convinced he can. I think he's up against a Goliath, but we all know how that went for David.
Yeah. I mean, the guy is such an unknown when it comes to doing something like, running the Pentagon. That's hard to say. I've liked a few things I've heard him. I had not heard of him before yesterday. I mean, I'll be honest. And so I did some quick research last night, and some of the things he said in the past I like, some of the things he said in the past I don't really like. But like the idea of him being such an outsider is very interesting. And somebody who's not done something like this before, you can never underestimate the inertia of the system, of the machine in Washington. And so honestly, I'm not that optimistic about him making whole-scale changes. I am hopeful that what will happen is there will be at least some, like the trans nonsense in the military and stuff like that will hopefully become more and more, less and less prominent. I'm with you. A country that sends women into combat is just shameful. Something's wrong with it.
Israel, we're thinking of you. There seems to be a very pro-Israeli flavor to them. I have a somewhat controversial opinion about Israel, but nonetheless, what do you think about that? What does that signal? Huckabee, very pro-Israel, Marco Rubio, etc. So how do you see that?
It's the least surprising thing ever, to be honest. I mean, I don't remember what your position is, but I am not pro-Israel, to be honest. I'm not pro-Hamas either, just to be clear.
Right? Yeah.
I think it's.
Duh.
It's just a classic case of where just because one side does evil, that doesn't mean all responses are on the table and are moral.
Exactly.
I'll go back to 9/11. 9/11 was evil. Osama bin Laden was evil. That doesn't mean our reaction to it, Patriot Act and all that stuff was all, and what we did in like Afghanistan and Iraq and all that was all justified. Same thing here. But the fact is that we simply, in American politics, there is no significant politician who is not very pro-Israel. The Israeli lobby is very powerful in America. That's not like some controversial statement. That's just a statement of fact. And so the fact is, Trump ran on that too. He never acted like he wasn't. So I fully expected that many of the people he appointed would be very pro-Israel people. That being said, here's my hope in Trump. He does not like being he does not like not being the alpha dog. He does not like being told what to do. He does not like looking like he's being told what to do. So my hope for him is he won't be as much of a lapdog of Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel as many American politicians, including like Joe Biden and others, are. And instead he'll be like, okay. And I do think he has an instinct for peace. Like he said, I believe when he says, I just want the dying to stop, the killing to stop.
Amen. Yeah.
So my hope is that he will be enough, of an influence as at the top to be like, okay, yeah, we're not going to be criticizing Israel publicly, but privately, we are going to tell Netanyahu and others, listen, we're going to get this deal done. We're going to get the killing to stop. We're going to get the peace to happen. That's my hope, because it is troubling some of these people that he's appointing to these positions. No question about it. I'm nervous. Some of them are just. Especially. Let me be blunt. The evangelical Christians who honestly believe that we need to reestablish a third temple that will then bring about the coming back of Jesus Christ. And so we have to support Israel no matter what. That's insane. That's theologically bankrupt. And it worries me because Huckabee is like that. I already forgetting his name, the guy who just got appointed Secretary of Defense, Peter, whatever. He's like that. And so that is concerning. Again, though, my hope is Trump. He does not like being looked as like somebody who just follows what somebody else does.
I certainly hope
he's not going to be one to be seen.
I just put out a video on Sunday quoting Saint Irenaeus of Lyon from the 2nd century. The third temple belongs to the Antichrist. You do not want to be on the building committee for the third temple. You don't want to be on. I mean, it's going to get built. Don't get us wrong. It's going to happen. But you don't want to be a part of the team that helps make it happen. You got to pick carefully here. Right. And I find it very fascinating. So many are sort of swept up in this, and we're given two options. You're either 100% for Israel or 100% against. Well, how about a middle ground? I don't think Jews should be slaughtered. I also don't think we should be leveling cities. There should be a middle option here, but there never is. It seems these days.
Pretty obvious to me too, Joe.
Hello. Let's go to obvious here. We have a few minutes left with Eric Sammons, crisismagazine.com. Let's go to the obvious. He's got the trifecta. He's got the House. He's got the Senate. He's got the executive branch. We've talked a lot about the gutting of the government bloat. Whether or not he'll pull it off, I don't know. But I'm still skeptical as to whether or not the Republicans will actually participate over the next 4 years with the Trump agenda. Do you think they will?
That's my biggest concern. I've said this to many people that my biggest concern is Republicans will be his barrier, Republicans in Congress and the Senate. That being said, I think here's the key. He has to get a number of wins in the first 100 days. If he does that, then what happens is people will jump on the train because politicians just go with whatever the popular thing is. So if he gets some real wins in those first 100 days, like maybe he gets the war in Ukraine to end or something like that. I mean, some real tangible wins. Maybe something happens, he does something very good for the economy or whatever. Then I think he can have real success for all 4 years. But if it looks like he stumbles out of the gate, then that those Republicans who are not really behind him, they're gonna very quickly bail. But if he has those wins, those successes early on, then those Republicans will just be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to go with him because I see a winner here." So I think that's the key. He has to come out of the gate, swinging, and he has to really make some big differences. I think if he does that, the chances are good. But we'll see what happens there. I mean, there's only so much you can do. I think the biggest win would be ending getting the conflict in either Ukraine or the Middle East or both to end. If he does that, if he gets a real ceasefire that lasts, I think I think that would be his biggest win, and it's the most doable too. By the way, you can't fix an economy in a couple days or something like that. But he could potentially get one of those two or both of those conflicts to end, and that would be huge.
Lindsey Graham has never met a Ukrainian he did not want to give your money to, Eric. I'm just not so convinced that they are going to let him end this thing as quickly as he wants to. The other question in my mind is whether or not Vladimir Putin can accept the terms that Donald Trump might offer him. Keep the land that you have now. Let's just freeze the line wherever it is right now and all just take a step back. I'm not sure that would meet Vladimir Putin's requirement to have a true buffer zone between Russia and NATO, continuingly to encroach upon that border, sort of forcing these issues to become a bigger and bigger problem. Do you think that they'll go for that?
Hard to predict, obviously, what Putin would do. I think, though, if he gets the Donbass, the eastern part of Ukraine, he already has basically in control over. If he gets that and he is given assurances, like some type of hard-clad assurances that Ukraine will not join NATO, I think if he gets those two things, I think he declares victory. Because what he wants to do is he wants to be able to declare victory to his people. And I think that, because that's ultimately, if you look at what he asked for, what he said he wanted at the beginning was, first of all, he wanted assurances that Ukraine will never join NATO. And second of all, he wanted the Donbass, as he put it, to be able to decide their future. And it is true that most of the people there are Russian-speaking, they're ethnically Russian, and they want to be aligned with Russia, whether as part of Russia or as an independent state that's aligned with them. That's up for debate. But I think then he can declare victory. He can look back and say, listen, here's what I said 2 years ago, 3 years ago now almost. Here's what I got. I won. And I think that's what you do. And honestly, for people who are like, that's not fair, that's not good, it's just a reality. Russia's won this war. They're not going to lose. Ukraine's not going to win this war. You got to just take the reality and negotiate peace. So we have Ukrainians to stop dying, and Russians for that matter. That's what we want. So I think it is possible. I think Putin would take it because he could take it as a victory on his end.
You said in the article, this has been the most significant political realignment I've seen in my lifetime, even more so than the Reagan Democrats of 1980s. Trump's win in 2024 does not look at all like his victory in 2016. So are you saying that, as we just kind of tie this interview up, because we started here, I want to end here. So this political realignment, do you really feel that is a seismic shift from his first term?
I do. I really do, because if you look at the people who have aligned with him now, it is people who were not his supporters. In fact, they were his opponents back in 2016. It's made up of coalition people who are former Democrats. It's made up of, the tech billionaires. The health nuts. It's just, I think it's very different than 2016. It feels very different. Will it last? That's what we'll find out.
Like Nancy Pelosi said, we got to pass it to know what's in it. So we're about to find out. We passed it. Now we're gonna find out.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.